Hey friends, welcome back to the bee yard. I'm a little ways away because the bees are being very defensive today. They have been for probably the last week or so. I think resources are really starting to be a little bit hard to come by or a little more selective. So the bees are being a lot more defensive than they have been most of the year. This is hive number 3 that you're looking at here close to us. This is by far my strongest colony this year. That third box up on the stack there, that is a Flow Hive. It's a first generation Flow Hive. We bought it 3 years ago, I think Rachel bought it for us, or maybe, yeah, 3 years ago I think Rachel bought it for us. And we used it the first year we had it. We didn't get anything out of it. The bees never did anything with it. The second year we didn't even use it. This year's our third year using it, and they're using it. The bees are using it. Took them quite a while, but they finally sealed up all the cells. They've been storing honey in it, and I checked it about a week ago, and some of the middle frames were about 90%, and 2 days ago I checked it again, and I had 4 frames right through the middle that are completely filled, capped, waxed, ready to go, ready to harvest. Tonight we're going to go and we're going to pull 3 of them, and I'm going to take you guys along and tell you what our thoughts are on the Flow Hive now that we actually get to use it for its intended purpose. All right, we're good. The lighting tonight is so challenging because the sun is so bright. My hives are white, and it keeps doing crazy stuff. But we do have to, I have to get going on this because we're approaching 8 o'clock and I will lose light at some point. I really wish the bees weren't so aggressive as they are tonight, because sometimes I really hate wearing my veil when I do videos where I'm talking with you, because it feels impersonal to me. So my apologies for that, but the bees are quite defensive. My setup, let's go over that real quick. I run 10 frame Langstroth hive bodies, bottom brood chamber, second brood chamber, got a metal queen excluder here. Flow Hive, 7 frame Flow Hive. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is compatible with 10 frame Langstroth. If you run 8 frame, then you need the smaller Flow Hive. Top box is another super. Brand new frames in it. They work so hard on this one. I threw this on there the other day just to say, hey, if you guys want something to do, you can start drawing out these frames for me. I doubt they're going to store anything on it, but if I can at least get them to draw some of them frames for me this year, so I have for next year, we'll run with it. My little shelf down here, if you can see this, I threw this together last night. It's just some 1x6 planks screwed together, and then there's some brackets on the inside, and I just screw it to the hive body. I can move it up or down depending on what I'm doing. Right now it's positioned for half-gallon size jars, which is what we're going to use tonight. So in the interest of full disclosure, this one, and this one are ready to harvest. You'll see in some spots here on the ends, hopefully it's showing up on some of the end cells aren't actually filled all the way or capped, but the very next row over is. So as I was saying, in full disclosure, this frame right here, me and Rachel harvested this one last night without you guys. We didn't bring you along, I'm sorry. But I'm not a big fan of filming videos when I'm doing something the very first time, so I wanted to do one last night, get some experience under my belt, so when I bring you guys with me, I can show you exactly what's going on and what I know so far. So there's a few components. Tonight we're going to do this one, and this one. And with half-gallon size mason jars, I can't do this one and this one at the same time because they're too close together. So I'm going to do this one and this one first. And there's little plugs up here at the top that block off the key entrance. I guess I probably should have done a better or I guess I should say, this isn't a here's all the full details on the Flow Hive. It's more of a let's harvest honey from the Flow Hive and show you guys how it works and my thoughts on them now that I've actually got to use them. So I need to grab my tubes. So with these caps out, this is where the key goes. There's a long key like this that slides in here, and when you turn that, that's what opens these frames. And down here, the little plugs, the bees definitely will propolize them a lot. So bring some pliers with you. And there's always a little bit of honey that's going to come out. So let's pull them both now and get the drip action going. And then you want to make sure where these tubes go in here is clean so you get a good seal. Yeah, that looks good. And these little tubes, they have a little nub right there. And that little nub is what goes on the bottom. And it fits and locks right in there. So there we go. We got our jars set up. We got our tubes in. We pulled our caps here. And I think it's time for the honey to flow. Oh no, I'm making a mess back there. It's okay. So yeah, everything looks good. Let me get you guys in a good position and I'll crack this first one open. Well, I'll crack one of them open. All right, I think I'm good. I think I got a decent enough position with the lighting. So this key, this slides all the way into the back of the hive. And when you turn it, it's gonna take every single cell within that frame and try to shift them all at once. It's not a good idea to try to do the whole thing at once. It's best to start about 3 or 4 inches at a time and only do a few of them. Let's back it off a little. Yeah, the bees really sealed that one good. Okay, so it's vertical now, so it's doing the ones closest to us. Now we can slide it a little farther. Bingo. Go a little farther. There we go. I'm starting to see some action right here on the end. And all the bees right around here are going to start freaking out, and they're really going to start moving around like crazy. And go a little deeper. Now we can go all the way in. Oh, that back part's tight. Okay. All right, we got honey rolling. Let's get this next one going. So we got 2. So while this is where I'm working on this, I could have pulled these frames. You can, on a Flow Hive, you can pull the frames out just like any other normal colony or box. You can pull the frames out and look at them and inspect them just as you would anything else. And I very well could have pulled these tonight and showed you the cappings and said, okay, here, look, this is what it looks like when they're fully capped. But because I just did it a few days ago and it really disturbs the bees, I did not want to do that tonight because I don't want bees everywhere right now, because I don't want them in this honey. So I do have a couple pictures. I'll try to throw them in so you can see kind of what it looks like. So these are fully open now and ready to go. Yep. It's beautiful. And the sun shining like this. Terrible for filming, but beautiful. It's like it's got all the bubbles form, makes it look like there's glitter in it. And you will end up with, there'll be little pieces of wax in there and a few pieces of pollen in there, but it absolutely hurts nothing. It's perfectly fine to consume. Some argue it's actually even good for you. It's just pure, raw, unfiltered honey. Bunch of geese flying overhead. Hey, 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 go away. So last night when we did this, it was a little bit cooler than it is tonight, and it took probably a good 30 minutes to drain the whole thing. Tonight it's a little bit warmer, so I'm hoping it goes a little bit faster. I did bring some extra. I have one more jar. Normally a single frame from a Flow Hive will yield about a half a gallon of honey. So I have 3 jars here, plus I have an extra if we need it for overflow. There you go. I got you and leaving a little closer. So I guess some things to keep in mind. Once you crack these frames open using that key up here at the top, you can't turn it off. That seal is broken, and even if I inserted the key and turned it back the other direction, so the key has a spot at the bottom to open it and a spot at the top to close it. If I put that key in the top and I closed it right now, those frames are going to shift back, but all that propolis and wax that had been put in there to seal them is gone. So all that honey is just still going to leak. So make sure you bring, oh, my suit's not even zipped up. Make sure you bring enough jars, more jars than you think you're going to need, because once this jar is full, if I don't have another, you're either stick your mouth up there or you're still going to start losing honey. I guess I can go over a few other things while we're waiting. So what are my thoughts on the Flow Hive? Like I said, we tried it the very first year and we had zero luck with it. The bees would go up there and they'd mess around a little bit, and they basically, I either didn't have a strong enough colony or the bees just didn't really like it. Last year our colonies were weak. We tried to super them, but they never did anything last year. We got zero honey last year. This year we decided, okay, let's just pick one of the hives. In the early spring or early summer when we put the supers on, they were all about the same. Now this one is definitely one of the strongest, which is the one that ended up with the Flow Hive. And the bees would start going up there, but it really felt like they weren't doing a whole lot. So I think on two occasions I came out and I pulled the frames and I would spray them. I had a spray bottle with water and about 20% honey, and you shake it up, and I sprayed all the frames down with it, let them dry, and then put them back in, and that draws the bees up in there, and it kind of trains them that, hey, when you have an excluder here, you need to teach the bees or train the bees that it's okay to go through this thing. You can fit, you can do it. So by spraying down the frames, it kind of helped draw the bees up there. At least I think it did. Either that or I was way more patient with them this year. I'm not really sure, but it took them quite a long time to go through and seal all those little cells, because they're actually separated and they'll have a little crack all the way around them. And the bees got to go and fill that crack on every single cell, and then fill it, and then come back and cap it with wax. And so we would open up the back and we'd look back here and it's like, okay, they're not doing anything. And you look in the little side window and it's like, okay, yeah, there's a whole bunch of bees up here, but I don't know what they're doing. And that process is just, it requires so much patience. And sometimes I think the windows make the patience harder, because you see bees there and you see bees working and you know they're doing something. But deep inside of those frames in the center, that's where the real work is starting, in the center. And that's where they're going to usually start storing their nectar first. And you can't really see that. So we were patient and we waited and we waited. And then a couple weeks ago, we saw a couple little glimmers of, oh, look, there's nectar in here in the back. And then the next day there was more nectar and more nectar. And eventually there was like a whole thing of nectar. It's like, okay, we need to pull these things and see if they're capped, because if they're capped, they're ready to go. So even though the back wasn't capped, when you pulled the frame, 98% of the cells were all capped and ready to go. So could I have been more patient and waited for them to seal all these back ones as well? Probably, but once the bulk, the 98% of the honey is capped, you know it's been dehydrated enough that the water content is low enough, and you should be good to go. Because they're really slowing down now. I wish I could get this third one rolling, but I don't think. All right, so we're really starting to come to a close here. It's been about 10 or 15 minutes. Well, if there's still going to be some honey in there that's gonna drip down, and that's okay. Nice. Oh man, now I've got honey on my gloves. You can tell fall's coming when the yellow jackets come out. So I promised you some thoughts, or my thoughts on the Flow Hive. Like I said, the first year didn't work for us. Second year we didn't even try it. This year we put it on a random hive and it's worked out great for us. Let's see. There's a couple of channels that I want to encourage you to check out, and I'll try to post the actual links to the videos that are in my head, and that is Vino Farm, V-I-N-O, and Frederick Dunn. Now Vino Farm, they're up in Vermont, I want to say, quite sure. And he's done a lot of analysis on their climate and their flow of nectar and their dearth of when there's not a flow. And he's basically come to the conclusion that flow hives really aren't for him. They don't fit his there's bees here. I have to put my suit back on. They don't really fit in with his ecosystem, with his bees and his timing of everything. So he's kind of pushed them to the side and said, I'm not going to use these. Frederick Dunn, on the other hand, who lives in Pennsylvania, farther south, almost in line with Michigan, here where we are, Frederick loves them. I think he has about 5 of them now, and he's quite fond of them, and he has quite a few videos on them. Goes through the harvesting process probably in way more detail than I can do. Plus he has way more experience than I have with them. So for us, would I recommend this to a brand new beekeeper? No, I don't think I could recommend it to a new beekeeper. Brand new beekeeper, the first year, second year, you need to focus on your bees. You'll need a super because you don't ever want your bees to become honey-bound, which is where the queen doesn't have anywhere to lay. You need supers for storage if the bees need it. But to invest $400 or $500 in a flow hive your first year or second year, I probably would advise against it for most people. Spend those first couple of years on your bees, getting to know your bees, observing, learning how to do proper inspections, mite checks, treating for mites, getting your colonies through winter. Focus on that stuff first. Get yourself a good foundation. focus on that, especially if you're brand new. The first year when we harvested honey, we had a traditional supers, and we harvested that honey. We don't own an extractor, so we harvested that honey by taking the frames and we scraped all the comb off. All that wax that those bees built up and drew all that comb out. We destroyed it all, crushed it, filtered all of that to get the honey. Now we kept the beeswax, we kept the honey, but the next following year, when we go to put supers back on, those hives are just about bare. The bees basically have to start from scratch. So if we, for $400 or $500 in a flow hive, you can also buy an extractor, which means you can pull your supers, cut the caps off, extract the honey out, and then you have drawn comb already for the next year, so the bees don't have to start from scratch. So there's definitely a lot of things to weigh, pros and cons. Do they have to start over from scratch with the flow hive? Well, those little cells, when you crack those cells to let that honey drain out and you put it back together, they got to go in and seal that whole line all the way around. It's not as much work as drawing out a whole comb, but there's still work involved. So keep all of that stuff in mind, and I guess from my perspective, my advice: Flow hive, do we like it? Yes, we enjoyed it this year. It worked. And we're thinking about maybe buying another one for next year. I think they're totally out of stock right now. I checked their website and they're gone. So maybe this winter we'll pick one up. That way we have another one for next year. But what we spend for one of these, we could buy an extractor and stick with traditional. So we'll think about it over the winter. And before you pull the trigger on something like this, do your research. We're getting close. Oh, I see the, every now and then in between the frames you'll see something white moving across, and they're pulling the caps off so that they can get inside of there and start cleaning out what's left of the honey. And it's absolutely awesome. I love honey. My favorite, peanut butter and honey sandwiches. Been eating them since I was a little kid. So with these 3 jars here tonight, plus the one we had that we did last night when we did our trial run, so I knew what I was doing when I filmed tonight, a full 7-frame flow hive could yield you 3.5 gallons. So half gallon per frame times 7, 3.5 gallons. We basically have 2 gallons so far at this point this year. We'll be patient on these ones. We'll see if they fill them up. If you have questions about the flow hive, something I didn't answer, I feel like I talked a lot, which I do when I do beekeeping videos because I'm passionate about it. But if I didn't answer any questions for you, post them in the comment section down below and I'll do my best. And we need to come back out here and do more bee stuff. I feel like I did a lot of beekeeping videos last year and hardly any this year, but I don't know. We're really busy this time of year. See you guys on the next video. Hey. This honey is for me.